Hi, good day to Dr. Rohaya and my fellow classmates. My name is Kevin Tang. Today I'm going to present an article entitled Misalignment of Iranian EFL Teachers, Written Corrective Feedback, Beliefs and Practices from an Activity Theory Perspective. This article is written by Neda Soleiman and Muhammad Brahimi, and it is published in the Journal of Cogent Education. So the sequence of the content will be from introduction, literature review, um, theoretical framework, method. I will combine both results and discussion, and also conclusion. Okay, let's move on to the introduction. Okay, so many studies have been done on this written corrective feedback, and the focus um, for WCF in second language acquisition has increased over the last few decades, especially the last 3 decades. So, type of studies that have been conducted were effectiveness of um, written corrective feedback, learners' engagement with and reactions to written corrective feedback, self and peer feedback, and teachers' written corrective feedback, performance, and beliefs. However, these kind of studies have been criticized by many other researchers for approaching written corrective feedback as a decontextualized, cognitively inspired, and linear activity, okay, which provide no details on teachers' purposes and reasoning, classroom contexts, learners' goals, and responsiveness to students' responsiveness to written corrective feedback, and how and why teachers' written feedback uh, practices are projected in certain ways. Teachers' provision over written corrective feedback is different. So different teachers that provide the way that provide this kind of written corrective feedback is different. It depends on individual, on the teachers themselves, and also the contextual features, as well as educational and social backgrounds of the teachers. So gaining a contextualized knowledge of written corrective feedback for all the teachers is necessary in upgrading their feedback practices. So the research gaps for this article are: the first one, previous studies were in broad brush fashion and revealed a limited snapshot of teachers' written corrective feedback performances. Previous research lacked ecological validity, which failed to address the impact of classroom realities, contextual elements contributing to teachers' beliefs and practices, and the reasons accounting for the possible mismatches between written corrective feedback beliefs and also the practices. So the objective of this study is to examine EFL teachers' written corrective feedback beliefs and practices from an activity theory perspective. Okay, so the researchers, they wanted to see um, from the perspective of activity theory, okay, how these teachers' beliefs and practice, the mismatch between the beliefs and practices of written corrective feedback. So let's move on to the literature review. The first part is an overview of teachers' written corrective feedback. So recent studies have focused on the inconsistency between teachers' beliefs and their practices over feedback. So the study conducted by Montgomery and Baker in 2007 um, suggested that teachers' actual performances showed that their written corrective feedback mainly addressed local language errors. Lee, in his or her article in 2008 and 2009, okay, mentioned that teachers practiced comprehensive and explicit written corrective feedback despite preferring selective and implicit written corrective feedback. Okay, I will mention about what is this comprehensive, explicit, and selective and implicit written corrective feedback later during the discussion. Yeah, Junkira and Payant in 2015 also mentioned that although the teacher believed in commenting on global issues of writing, she practiced giving explicit written corrective feedback and focused on local issues of writing. Beliefs and practices could be incorporated all the time. Okay, so also this global issues and also global issues and local issues of writing. I will mention it later. Mu and Cross White in 2019 mentioned that there are three areas of mismatch between beliefs and practices. The first one is provision of explicit and implicit written corrective feedback. The second one is different forms of implicit WCF. And also the third is the distribution of local versus global errors. Okay, it is found that the lack of training for WCF and contextual factors are the main sources of this mismatch between beliefs and practices. Bichner and Storch, 2016, mentioned that teachers' beliefs and practices were studied from a cognitive theory perspective. Okay, they mentioned that most of the studies are based on cognitive theory perspective. Cross in 2010 said that leveled criticism against using cognitive theory to inform the relationship between beliefs and practices. It is not a unified and comprehensive conceptual framework to support the changes and development of beliefs and practices. Okay, so this cross go against the theory, the using of theory, the using of cognitive theory to inform the beliefs and practices among the teachers in for this written corrective feedback. Storch in 2018 suggested using activity theory as a framework because it is more comprehensive. It has more comprehensive relationship between teachers, written corrective feedback, beliefs, and practices. Okay, so let's move on to activity theory. So activity theory is an extension of the social cultural theory. The language learning is a goal-directed activity mediated by a myriad of factors. Okay, this is by Angstrom. Okay, so I think that we also agree that language learning is a goal-directed activity. Okay, and there are many factors that affecting this language learning. These factors might be physical tools, for example, computer, pen, paper, and book, and or symbolic artifacts like language, moral codes, religious and geopolitical ideas, which mediate the quality of the relationship between the doer of the activity and the surrounding world. In all the versions of, since there are many versions of activity theory mentioned by the previous studies, all the versions of activity theory mention that an activity is explained in a network of connections between six main components. That means in all the versions, okay, it is found that there are six main components in the activity theory. So the first three components that correspond to stimulus, response, and also the outcome are tools. So instruments through tools are instruments through which an action is done. Okay, so what kind of tools that the teachers have been using in this written corrective feedback? Okay, and the subject, the doer of the action, which refers to the teachers, and also the object. Okay, a particular achievement or outcome of an action. Okay, what is your object of doing um, WCF? Okay, so the fourth component is the community of stakeholders and or those who are involved with with share a goal or interest. Okay, that means the community. The fourth component is the community. Okay, that sharing the same goal. The fifth component is the communications and interactions between the community of practice and the subject of the activity are controlled by the rules of the activity system. So the fifth component is the rule. Basically, is the rule, okay, that govern the communication and the interactions. The sixth component is the division of labor, okay, the labor, okay, which shows the position of the people and the power relations in the activity system. Okay, so who are involved in the activity. So this study adopted the third version of activity theory, or so-called G3. Okay, it attempts to show the intersubjectivity and shared voices of the participants involved in an activity. So you can see in figure 1 here. So the first three components are here: subject, tool, object, and also the outcome. And the fourth is the rule, the fifth is the community, and the last one is the division of labor. If you look at the arrows, okay, all of them are the arrows are pointing to each other. Yeah. Lee. Okay, let's move on to theoretical framework. Lee, Bichner, and Storch. Basically, these are the famous people in written corrective feedback. Yeah. So they recommended using activity theory as the theoretical framework to bridge the gaps in WCF research. So just now I mentioned that previous research, many of the researchers that use cognitive theory. Okay, so these three renowned WCF researchers that wanted to try out the new theory, which is the activity theory. Okay, this theory interprets an activity from multiple perspectives and takes individual and contextual factors into account to explain the theory. Okay, this theory enables researchers to have multilateral outlooks toward the teacher's written corrective feedback and explain their WCF behaviors. Okay. Okay. So the previous research on WCF from an activity theory perspective. Okay. So Yu and Lee, Mack and Lee, Lei, Lee, and Han. All these researchers that have done in a previous decade, um, all the studies used qualitative designs. All of these mentioned researchers that use qualitative designs and multiple sources of data collection to show feedback as a socially mediated activity that facilitates group interactions through using first language and second language writing norms, which is the rule. Remember the components. The fourth component is the rule. The group activities, also the rule, seeking help from the teachers, which is the community, and also playing different roles, which is the last component, the labor. Okay. Lee used activity theory to inform her study and criticized conventional written corrective feedback in an EFL context. Okay. She introduced mediating learning experience, MLE, which focused on the human role, mediated and dialogic process of feedback provision. Okay. And this MLE actually gives rise to purposeful and more effective written corrective feedback. So what are the research questions for this article? There are four. The first one is, what are the teachers' beliefs about written corrective feedback? Okay, so we want to know, okay, they are, since they are providing this WCF, so what are their beliefs towards this WCF? Number two, what are the teachers' beliefs about the most appropriate type, focus, and scope of WCF? Number three, are there any mismatches between the teachers' beliefs and their real practices? So in the introduction and the literature review, we have been looking at previous research Okay, there are many mismatches between the teacher's beliefs and also their real practices. So we wanted to see whether it is really the mismatch is really existing. Yeah. If so, how can they be explained from an activity theory point of view? Okay. So the researchers want to relate these kind of mismatches to the activity theory point of view. The fourth one is how can teachers WCF activity be explained from an activity theory perspective? Okay, let's move on to the method. Okay, the context of this study. Okay, it happened in an Iranian language center in Iran. Okay, and the center offers general English courses to the students with different levels of English proficiency. Each level, each level is about 10 weeks. Okay, so 1 hour 45-minute sessions per week. That means in 1 week there are 2 sessions. One session is 1 hour and 45 minutes. So in Iran, English is mainly taught through grammar translation method at schools. Hence, students or learners have no chance to use English for communication. Okay, so English is taught for grammar translation purposes. It is not for communication purpose. Okay, so what the learners have to do or the students have to do is they have to attend private language learning centers, which English is taught through communicative approach. Okay, so the private language centers that will teach English through communication or interaction. Writing in the private language centers of Iran is not attached as much importance as reading and oral skills due to the multitude of factors including high class size, lack of enough time, students' demands, and teachers' workload. Okay, so that means writing is not really as important as reading and also oral skills. Okay, so it is not really being focused in Iran. Teachers assign the writing task due to the center's requirement to cover all the syllabus because the center they have their own syllabus. So in order for the teachers to cover all the syllabus are covering all the 4 skills. Okay, so writing is one of the skills. So the teachers have to do writing because it is the requirement of the center to cover all the syllabus. Okay, and students are not normally required to apply the teacher's feedback. So the teachers they can give feedback, but it is not necessary for the students to um, apply the teacher's feedback. So the participants of this study, okay, the sampling is purposive and random sampling. Okay, so 3 teachers were selected based on voluntarily basis. So these researchers that went into this language center, and there are about 8 teachers. There are about 8 teachers. Okay, so 3 teachers agreed to volunteer themselves in participating in this research. Okay, so all the 3 teachers they were teaching one of the B2 levels. Okay, so B2 levels are chosen, okay, because the students start writing a standard text. So what is a standard text? A standard text means they have to write one full essays with paragraphs. Okay, if they go down to B1 or other levels, lower levels, okay, it is not really suitable because the lower levels only focuses on controlled and guided writing, but only short paragraphs. They're only required to write paragraph, not the full essays. Okay, so all the 3 teachers were native speakers of Persian because they are in Iran. They are originally from Iran, so they are Persian. Okay, they speak Persian. They held MA degree in TEFL, and they have more than 10 years of teaching experience. Okay, and that did not attend any training on teaching, writing, and written corrective feedback. No training provided to them before this research. So the instruments, there are 2. The first one is semi-structured interview. So the 4 questions being asked to these participants are, what is your attitude towards WCF? What factors shape your attitude towards WCF? Explain. What kind of errors should be addressed in WCF? Local or global errors, and why? How implicit or explicit should WCF be? And the last one is, should WCF address all the student errors or some specific ones? Why? Okay, so of course, when these kind of questions were given to the participants, they were explained for the terms like local or global errors, implicit, explicit errors. Okay, what are those terms referred to? The second instrument is stimulated recall interview. So after the semi-structured interview, okay, so the participants will be called and to do this stimulated recall interview. So what is stimulated recall interview? It is to find the reasons for their comments, because the teachers that wrote comments in the students' paper, right, their essays. So the researcher, they want to find out why did the teacher or the teachers write down such comments on the students' paper. Okay, so this stimulated recall interview took around 45 minutes for each teacher. Yeah. So the materials used in this research. So the writing tasks were used to elicit samples of teachers' real practices of written corrective feedback. That means it is not purposely done due to purposely done for this research. It is not, but it is a real life practice. Okay, the teachers really have to teach the writing in the class. Okay, the task appeared in the second unit of the book the teachers were teaching. Okay, they were using one book, so the task actually appeared, or it is in the second unit of the book, and the topic of the unit is violence. The students were required to write 3 paragraphs to address the issue raised in the prompt. Okay, so a prompt is given to them. So in the prompt, they will have to write 3 paragraphs for the essay, for the issue. Okay, so the word limit is about 200 to 250 words. The teachers provided feedback on these writings. So after the students have completed the writing, they have to submit to the teachers. So the teachers have to mark and give feedback on the writings. And then the feedback has to be sent to the office of the language center before it can be returned to the students. Why? Because the researchers need to collect all the feedback. That is why it has to be sent to the office so that the papers can be passed to the researchers. So 5 papers were selected because those 5 papers were selected because they have a large numbers of comments. Maybe other papers they have a few comments only. So the researchers they wanted to see comments. The purpose of this research is to see the comments, right? So they have to select those papers which have a large number of comments. Okay, not errors, but the teacher's comments. Okay, so 5 papers were selected. So the data collection. The institute manager's consent was obtained prior to conducting this research. A semi-structured interview was started in the second week of a 10-week-long semester. All interviews were done in Persian, their native language, and all of the interviews took around 90 minutes. At the end of week 7, after all the teachers had submitted a copy of their students' writings, the papers were then collected by the researchers. Okay, so the students have to complete their writings by week 7 so that it can be passed to the teachers, and the teachers can put down the comments and then pass to the researchers. 3 days after the collection of papers by the researchers, the first author of this article conducted the stimulated recall interview. Okay, 15 minutes for each teacher to recall. Okay, so during the stimulated recall interview, the author of this paper, okay, gave 15 minutes to each of the teacher to recall what they had done on the paper, the comment, okay, with respect to the feedback they have given to the students. They were asked to think about the reasons for their choice of errors they had targeted and the method of feedback they applied, whether explicit or implicit. Okay, let's move on to data analysis. Okay, written corrective feedback coding. So coding was done because the first one is the interview. Okay, so coding was done based on Montgomery and Baker's categorization of global and local errors. Local issues are here. Local issues refer to sentence level or errors of form. Okay, so anything refers to local issues. It means like grammar mistake, punctuation, spelling, and mechanics of writing. Global issues refer to the organization of ideas and content of writing. Okay, so feedback type was coded based on various categorization of explicit, implicit feedback. Okay, so the type of feedback, okay, we have two, explicit and implicit. Explicit means to correct answers provided by the teachers, while implicit means circling, underlining, and using symbols or codes. Okay, that means if the teachers put down correct answers for the students, then the correction is explicit WCF. If the teachers only underline, circle, or put symbol on the paper, then the correction is implicit. Okay, the writing assignments were also classified in terms of whether WCF was comprehensive or focused. Okay, comprehensive means the teachers address all the errors. Okay, focus means the teachers focus on the limited number of errors, not the main problem. Okay, but only the limited number of errors. The two authors coded a random 20% of feedback units, okay, for global or local as well as explicit or implicit feedback. There were 83% and 94% agreement on global or local and explicit implicit errors by both researchers. The discrepancies between the two codings were discussed and resolved, and then the first author coded the remaining 80% of the teacher's comments. Okay, and then now we move on to interview analysis. Interviews were analyzed based on Creswell and Poff's data analysis spiral. Data analysis goes through four main loops. The first loop is reading and memoing emergent ideas. Second loop is describing and classifying codes into themes. This is based on Creswell and Poff. Yeah? The third loop is developing and assessing interpretations. And the last loop is representing and visualizing the data. So the first loop in this article that the researchers did, okay, they made notes of the interview transcripts. Okay, and then the second loop, they developed themes based on the most frequently happening reasons and the teachers provided for their feedback. The third loop is the researchers provided an interpretation for the emerged themes. And then the last loop, they visualized the themes, okay, through tables as well as the activity theory diagram. Okay, so now let's move on to results and discussion. Okay, results and discussion, I put them together because I found that it is actually, the discussion part is actually repeating. Okay, so I put them together to save time. So what are the research, to answer research question 1, what are the teachers' beliefs about written corrective feedback? Okay, so you can look at this table 2. Okay, so what are the teachers' beliefs? Okay, participants or the teachers showed negative feelings about providing feedback. Okay, they described WCF task as a pointless and exhausting job because it provided no real benefits to the teacher as well as the students. Okay, and also they get low pay, and also the tediousness of the job they have to do, and also students' lack of appreciation and no improvement in the writing. Okay, that is why they feel that it is not necessary to carry out this WCF or to put down the comments. Okay, and the table 3 here, you can see the reasons for WCF provision. Okay, why do they provide WCF? Okay, despite the negative feeling, they did provide WCF. Okay, although they do not want to do it, but they still do it because they believe that their responsibilities for teaching and learners' expectations were two main reasons for giving feedback, okay, and a sense of obligation to provide WCF on the students' writings, okay, because they are doing their job. That is why they feel that it is their obligation. Since they are teachers, they are obliged to give feedback, okay, to put down comments on students' paper. Okay, this is their feeling. Okay, to answer research question 2, what are the teachers' beliefs about the most appropriate WCF type, focus, and scope? Okay, this is quite long, so I will explain one by one. Look at table 4, teachers' beliefs about the areas targeted by WCF. Okay, so first part is the themes that the researchers had come out. Okay, the data showed variations in teachers' beliefs regarding areas to be addressed. Okay, so there are variations, not only just one beliefs. Okay, one belief. So Goli, one of the teachers, okay, he said that the primary focus should be on local areas in writing, not the global areas. Okay, local areas refer to like grammar mistake, punctuation, spelling. Okay, global areas are organization. Okay, so this Goli, he mentioned that local areas should be focused. Okay, because his student is still not very fluent or very proficient in the language. So why does he or why do the teachers have to focus on the organization when the local areas are still not corrected? Okay, Zainab and Amin, both of them mentioned that global issues are equally important. Okay, so both Zainab and Amin have different perspective over Goli. They think that both global and local issues are equally important. Okay, in terms of feedback scope, the teachers believe that focusing on a limited number of areas is more effective. Okay, it helps learners experience less cognitive load and learn more effectively. Okay, remember we have limited and also more comprehensive number of areas. Okay, so if the teachers only put down those important ones, that is the limited areas. Okay, if they put down all the areas, the students will, it's very hard for the students to process, okay, to process all the areas or to remember all the areas. So they only put down limited areas so that the students can learn through the limited areas. Okay, comprehensive WCF, it offers the learners a chance of having a complete pictures of areas and impact fossilization of areas. Okay, so some teachers that think that comprehensive written corrective feedback is better because it offers the learners to learn everything, to picture. Okay, so that the learners that know that where is the weakness, where do they need to improve. Okay, but some teachers that think that limited, that if they use limited errors method, then it is better for the student. Okay, so in terms of WCF type, the type of written corrective feedback, the participants preferred implicit WCF, okay, which develops a sense of autonomy and self-learning in learners. Okay, remember implicit, explicit. Implicit means the teachers only put down uh, like underlining, circling. Okay, they don't really put down the answers for the students. Okay, so they think this kind of implicit WCF can develop a sense of autonomy and self-learning for learners. Okay, it would enhance learners' confidence and self-learning and develop curiosity and autonomy. Okay, and also explicit WCF is more time and energy saving than implicit feedback. Okay, yeah, so in terms of explicit and implicit, I myself would prefer implicit as well. Okay, but it depends on the level of my students, the level of proficiency of my students. if I'm teaching, if I know that my students or the class of students, they have higher proficiency level, I will use implicit WCF. Okay, so that because I want my students to learn by themselves, to find out the errors by themselves, okay, so that it develops, like the author said here, it develops a sense of autonomy or self-learning. Okay, so for the weaker students, I will use explicit WCF. Okay, yeah, like it is more time and energy saving because you don't have to recheck and check and check. Because if you're using implicit, once you give it back to the students for correction, when they submit, you need to check again. But for implicit, you straight away write down the answers. The students go back and they know, oh, this is the error. So I just have to remember. Okay. But one disadvantage of explicit WCF is that I think students will not really learn from their mistake. Okay. So they learn, they see the mistake, they see that I put down the comment or I put down the answers for the errors. So they know, oh, okay, the teachers have already done the correction for me. So I don't have to do anything. Okay, so some students that have this kind of perception. Okay, so for me, implicit is more applicable and also better for the students to learn. Okay, to answer research question 3, are there any mismatches between the teacher's WCF beliefs and their real practices? If so, how can they be explained from an AT point of view? Okay, so the results of WCF analysis, okay, based on this table 7, you can see here 371 feedback items in 15 pieces of writing collected from the students, all addressed local issues rather than global issues. Okay, that means the spelling mistakes, the sentence structures mistakes, okay, the very little small mistakes, not the organization. Okay, the higher order issues like content and organization were ignored. So content and organization, there are global issues. Okay, all teachers addressed all the existing language errors, like it is the comprehensive feedback. Okay, they address all the existing language errors, not the limited ones. Okay, so the feedback type is 70% of the errors were treated explicitly. Okay, so the table shows in table 8 here, okay, it is almost complete mismatch between the teacher's beliefs and practices. You can see here, okay, focus, scope, and type. This is based on the component, okay, and also their belief and also their practices. Okay, so for the feedback focus, all the teachers, their belief, you can see here all focused, but when they practice it, it is all comprehensive. For the scope, okay, they believe that it should be, no, Goli believe that it should be local. Zainab and Amin, they believe that it should be equal, okay, but when they practice it, it, it is all local, okay. For the feedback type, the belief is implicit, but when they practice it, it is all explicit. Okay, so none of the three teachers' real feedback aligned with their beliefs. All the feedback were comprehensive. Okay, they list out all the errors. All the feedback were explicit, and all the feedback were on local issues only. So since the comparison between the teachers' beliefs and practices did not show an alignment between the two, a stimulus recall interview was conducted. Okay, remember they have this stimulus recall interview. Okay, it is to find out the reasons for this mismatch as well. So this helped to contextualize their feedback activity system within the AT framework. Okay, so feedback scope, comprehensive feedback. Okay, the paradox was attributed to the community component of AT. Okay, it had no training for, the teachers had no training for WCF, and they felt they should address all the students' errors. Okay, so the paradox for this mismatch is that they believe that they should do this, they should do limited feedback, okay, but it ends up they give comprehensive feedback. Why? Because the teachers claim that they there were no training for WCF for the teachers, and they felt that it is better. Okay, they should address all the students' errors. Apprenticeship of observation or following colleagues, community of practice component of AT was also the reason. That means they follow their colleagues. If their colleagues use comprehensive feedback, they will also use comprehensive feedback. This is the community of practice of AT. Okay, learners' expectation and cultural historical artifacts is another mediating factors for comprehensive feedback. That means the learner's expectation, because the learners, as I said just now at the beginning, the learners, they don't really have to apply the teacher's feedback. So the teachers might as well just put down all the comments, okay, so that the students know where is the errors and what is the errors, what are the errors, okay. And cultural historical artifacts, this is the cultural historical artifacts in Iran, because in Iran, teachers, it is more teacher-centered kind of learning. So teachers will give all the answers. Students just have to copy. Okay, so this culture is already fixed in the context of Iran. So that even if the teachers write down all the comments, the students do not necessarily have to follow or have to apply to apply the feedback. Okay, so feedback focus. Okay, referring to local and global errors. Time limitation and main goals of teaching as reasons for focusing on local areas. Like I said just now, okay, um, the time limitation, okay, the teachers use in giving the feedback, and also the goals of teaching. What is the goal of the teaching? Okay, students' proficiency level and the perception that accuracy should be focused rather than global errors were also the reasons for focusing on local errors. Like I said just now, okay, those good students, they will use global errors, okay, focusing on the structure, organization. But the low proficiency students, like teacher Goli said, okay, if the students, the basic ones that have not learned yet, how can they learn more sophisticated ones? Okay, so they would rather focus on the basic ones like spelling mistakes, okay, punctuation error, all this. So for the feedback type, implicit and explicit, teachers' assumption on the students' reluctance to revise papers, and so implicit feedback would not helpful to them. Okay, so the teachers they just assume that the students would be reluctant to do revision or to do correction. So that is why implicit feedback is not really helpful for the students. So teacher-centered approach to pedagogy in Iran, like I said just now, was also the reason that provided explicit feedback. Okay, and this explicit feedback is the labor component of AT in AT model. Okay, to answer research question 4, how can teachers WCF activity be explained from an AT perspective? Okay, so the researchers actually use this diagram, okay, the diagram, the 6 components of AT, okay, and put in all the components. So teachers' WCF activity system was analyzed in the light of the findings of this study and was then matched against the components of AT diagram. Okay, for example, the subject in this study is the EFL teachers. The explicit correction, comprehensive correction of local errors only is used. Okay, the rule is single draft. They only do single draft, no revision needed. Once the teachers have given back the draft, okay, and put down the comments or feedback, the students do not necessarily have to follow or to apply. The community here is the learner's expectations, learner's motivation, learner's proficiency level, apprenticeship of observation, colleagues' practices. All this I have explained just now. So it falls in the component of community here. Okay. Labor division is the students write essays on assigned prompts. Teacher provides feedback. Students may or may not review it. Okay. So it's not like in Malaysia, students have to do all the correction and we will check again. Okay, but in the context of Iran, the students do not necessarily have to review the comments or feedback. Okay, and last one, the object is the students' written errors. Okay, and the outcome is to provide accuracy improvement, to have accuracy improvement in the students' writing. Okay, so the conclusion is the limitations of this study are the model may not present a completely precise picture of teachers' feedback system in the Iranian EFL context because there are only 3 teachers involved in this study. Okay, so it may not provide a precise data. Okay, small number of participants will certainly affect the generalizability of the findings. Okay, this is for sure. Learners' beliefs and expectations of the type, focus, and scope of their teachers' WCF were not obtained. Yeah, because they did not ask the learners first. Okay, what is their belief or what are their expectations of this teachers' WCF? The real context was not observed, like in class, the real class context. Okay, so take note of what really happens in the real classroom context. Okay, for future research, the researchers suggested that the future researchers can employ a larger number of teachers teaching in different institutional settings or different institutes with different language learning policies and approaches. Okay, they can include students' ideas as well as how they would respond to the WCF they receive, and also they can provide a better picture of the real classroom context. Okay, like observation of teachers and learners' reactions and examining their expectations. Okay, so that is all my presentation and also my critiques of this article. Thank you.